Balikan ng magaganda at piling-piling programa mula Lunes hanggang Linggo. Aalawin kayo ng aming pilalang mga komentarista at public service program. Ito lamang himpilan ng DWBL.
Welcome to Radio Bible Study with Pastor Teacher David E. Thompson. Radio Bible Study is the ministry of Texas Corners Bible Church. We are a non-denominational Bible church dedicated to traditional worship and serious, systematic teaching of the Bible. Texas Corners Bible Church is located on 8th Street in Texas Corners, 1/4 mile north of Center Street. At the end of today's program, please stay tuned for information on church services, printed material, and tape.
Many years ago, when I was living in Grand Rapids, Michigan, going to school, there was a man in our church who was a legalist. He loved to pick and promote Old Testament law. He would actually go to parks and tell people they shouldn't play this particular kind of music on their boom boxes. He lived in a church home, and ultimately he moved out. And some of the ladies from our church went to clean the home, and when they were in the basement, they found his stash of pornography. I'm not talking about just Playboy. I'm talking about evil and bizarre porn. This was a man who tried to live by the law, but this was a man who was dominated by his own flesh. As believers, there are two ways we can live lives. We can be controlled by our flesh, or we can be controlled by the Spirit of God. Now, one of these ways will continually dominate our character and life. There are moments in every Christian's life when their flesh flares up. Sometimes believers fall. Peter denied Christ. David fell. This was not their continual character, however. This was a moment of fleshly weakness. Now, the key to spirituality is what we continually permit to govern us, our flesh or the Spirit of God. Holiness, in part, is determined by victory over flesh. It's not determined by living in a monastery or by walking rather than driving a car or depriving ourselves of food and sleep or by wearing strange clothing, but victory over the flesh. Holiness has to do with us having victory over our own flesh. Now, there's no question that in the mind of Paul, walking or living life by the flesh is closely connected to one's attempt to live life under the law. He said in Galatians 5:18, but if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. So a person who tries to live life under the law, or one who's an Old Testament legalist, will be one who will discover that flesh dominates that character. And that person will not live life according to the Spirit of God, but according to the flesh. So when you come to Galatians 5:19 to 21, Paul wanted to communicate a point. And that is, our Christian life is being lived either as a fleshly law-keeping legalist or as one spiritual who's led by God's Spirit. And we can determine this by our continual character manifestations. Now, I want to point out from verse 19, now the deeds of the flesh are evident, which are. Those verbal are present tense. What that means is the deeds or works of the flesh are continually evident. They are continually plain, open, blatant. They're not hidden. In other words, you can look at your own life, and if you're honest, you can see whether or not you're continually dominated by the Spirit of God or continually dominated by the flesh. If one is being led by his or her flesh, specifically as a law-keeping legalist, the flesh works will continually manifest themselves, and there will be very little victory. I'm sure you will have done many things on the list that we are going to look at this morning at some point in time. But the key to this is what is continually dominating your life now. Now, there are 15 flesh works that are named, and these things are named to give us a list of things which, if they're continually controlling our lives, mean we're not continually being controlled by the Spirit of God. And let me remind us that this list was written to believers in a church. These are things that are possible to exist in the life of a believer. Everything that is named here arises from one's flesh, not from the Holy Spirit, and not from Satan. I think Satan gets too much credit for things. He's used as a crutch to blame someone other than our own flesh. But if these things are continually dominating our lives, that means we are continually being dominated by our flesh. Flesh work number one, the flesh work of immorality. I'm reading from Galatians